Good morning. We're on time for a change. Mr. Gurley?
Good morning. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce Michael Aycock to have our invocation. I asked Michael to come up, and Michael is the chaplain of Wayne County Farm Association and does this well. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Joe. It's an honor to be here today. Honor to be here to stand up for my Lord this morning. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your mercy. Thank you for the grace that you bestow upon us each and every day. We ask you, dear Lord, to be with us this day and lead us and guide us in what you would have us to do. Help us to make the right decisions, dear Lord. Help us to do the things that we need to do for our county, dear Lord, and for our people, dear Lord. We just ask a special blessing upon each one of these commissioners, dear Lord. Just lead them and guide them in what they do. Lead us now and guide us, and we promise to give you all the honor and all the praise for what might happen. In your name we ask. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise and join me with the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Gurley. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes? And have there any corrections? Hearing none, got a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Just been agenda.
Yes, sir, we do have a couple of things. Number one, under special presentation, Sarah Strout with East Point is here, and she will give an update on activities that are happening with East Point. The second thing we would like to add under new business is a resolution for Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Proclamation. I believe somebody will be reading that from, Mr. Mayor will be reading that, so we'll put that under new business. And then under consent, we do have a resolution determining the opioid problem is a nuisance in Wayne County. And also, under consent, we would have a contract that would authorize representation in the opioid lawsuit.
Okay. Was there not one more?
And we do have one budget amendment that we are pulling, which is number 398.
And then there was something about a homestead?
Oh, that's right.
With S's and whatever acronym you'd like to choose, so.
Are there any more changes to the agenda?
No, sir, not at this time.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion on the floor, is any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. And we'll start out with, open broadband. I've been looking forward to seeing these guys. Yeah, they're gonna give us an update this morning where we are. And I know it's moving quickly, right?
It is.
Great.
I'm Alan Fitzpatrick. I'm the CEO of Open Broadband. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to give you an update today. Jeff Presley, our area manager for Eastern North Carolina, is here with me as well. Some of you may remember Jeff from previous meetings. What I wanted to do is give you an update today of our efforts to bring broadband to the underserved areas of Wayne County. Do I control it, or do you?
I think you can with that mouse right up there. I thought there was a mouse right up there.
Ah, there is. Okay. Thank you. Just to refresh everyone's memory, we were really looking to address the concerns that were raised in the survey that the county conducted on internet speeds. And the three things that came up in the survey that were of need were availability in areas where broadband is not available today. And broadband is defined as the FCC definition of 25 megabit download speed as a minimum and 3 megabit upload speed as a minimum. So the availability was the first objective. Second is producing higher speeds, higher than 25 megabit even. And then the third item was affordability, making sure the residents had access to affordable broadband at their homes. So this is a pictorial view of what we're in the process of building. If you look on the left, we have a data center in North Carolina that's connected to multiple carriers to the internet. We have installed fiber now in 2 locations in Wayne County. In fact, Jeff and I are going to the West Walnut Street building right after this to inspect the fiber that was pulled in. The fiber was also pulled into South Chestnut Street in Mount Olive. It's the base of one of the water towers there. So these 2 fibers are in place. From the tall building here on Walnut and the tower at Chestnut Street and Mount Olive, we're doing wireless connections out to customers and to other buildings and to other towers. So this is kind of what we're building in Wayne County. So all of this is either done or in process. Antennas are up, fiber is in place. So this is what we were doing last week. The red and white water tower you see on the left has our antennas at the very top. There is a tripod with a mast on it that houses our antennas. Fortunately, one of our installers took a picture for us when they were on top of the water tower, and that's the one to the right. So the larger antenna at the bottom is a 1.5 gigabit speed that connects tower to tower. The smaller antennas at the top can do 100, 200, and 300 megabit speed to customers. And then you can see that the smaller antennas at the top are pointed in multiple directions. That's an effort to try to cover as much of the community as possible. This is an example of what you're going to see at all the locations we go into. So this is just one water tower, but you'll see us do a similar thing at each place that we go. Here's a couple of pictures of the antennas at the user locations. So the one on the left is at the Mount Olive Airport. They were in need of high-speed internet. They were stuck with DSL service prior to us coming in. So they had like 4 megabit speed. There's a medical facility at the airport. There's the airport itself with a large new hangar, and they just couldn't live with the old speeds. So you can see the antenna sort of on the top corner of the new hangar. And then the antenna on the right, which is a little bit larger than a smartphone, is the antenna that goes over to the medical center. So you can see these are pretty unobtrusive at the customer premise, but this is how we're delivering the high-speed internet directly to the premise. A residential user would have a similar type of antenna on their home. So it's a lot smaller than like a DirecTV dish. These are pretty small. These pictures were all taken last week. We've gotten a lot of interest in the community. What you see here is kind of a stretch along, I guess you could say Highway 55 in the southern part of the county. All the dots that you see are residents and businesses that have signed up to get service from us. So there's a strong need. So we're really glad that we'd responded to your RFI and gotten engaged with the county, because there's definitely a need, particularly as you get outside of Goldsboro. Goldsboro itself has good internet speeds for the most part. We are going to offer higher speeds in Goldsboro. We're going to offer gigabit speed. That's one of the things that Jeff and I are going to be doing later today. Gigabit speed is 1,000 megabits per second. It's as fast as what Google Fiber is doing in the Triangle, or what Ting Internet is doing in Holly Springs. Try to remember where they were. But as you can see, there's just a strong interest. I think several of us were not sure about Seven Springs initially, like how many interested users we would have. But we're getting a lot of people in Seven Springs, kind of going over toward Mount Olive that are interested in service. Grantham area has been particularly of interest as well. I think we have over 30 people in Grantham alone that have signed up already, and we're not even live there yet. So they've signed up in advance. So we're starting with the sort of the southern end of the county. After we get everything installed, we do plan to eventually cover the rest of the county. So what's next? We are close to having a tower lease contract with the Wayne Water Districts. This has been a process which has taken a little bit of time to get all the districts together and to get their attorneys on board with the contract. We hope to sign that very soon. We're also looking to sign a contract with Public Safety to use their communication towers in the county. We're going to turn up Wi-Fi in Berkeley Sports Complex. We need the Wayne Water District contract to do that because we want to use one of their towers. So it's still on the to-do list until we get the tower. Obviously, we're going to be turning up customers. All those blue dots you saw on the last screen, we'll be turning them up over the next month or so. And then, as I mentioned earlier, offering gigabit speed right here in Goldsboro. And with that, I know I only had about 6 minutes. Just wanted to open it up for questions. What can I tell you about what we're doing?
Yes, I have two. Do you have a timeline as to the northern part of the county when we might be doing something up there?
We haven't spec'd out a timeline for the northern end yet. We were going to try to get the southern end done first. We can complete the pilot program that we had committed to. We do anticipate going to the northern part of the county, and it'll probably be later in the year. So it's not going to be the next few months. It'll be later in the year.
Okay, and also the last question is your high speed. Do you have a cost per month yet to the customer?
We do. For the gigabit speed, it's $350 a month.
Okay.
It's more than what a residential user would pay. I know you gave me a puzzled look. It's really designed for businesses that really need a lot of speed.
Right. What about the average residential user?
The average residential pricing starts at $30 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Right. So our typical residential user we have live in, say, Gaston County is paying on the average of $50 to $60 a month because they get a little bit higher speeds. But we've had quite a few users sign up for the 25 megabit speed, which is $30 a month. But the gigabit speed, we have an orthodontist that uses it in Belmont, North Carolina. The orthodontist takes x-rays of the mouth when he does his moldings and fittings, and these are very large files, and he has to upload them to the internet, to his source. And with gigabit speed, that happens a lot faster. So for a business like that, he's willing to pay the $350.
Right. Thank you.
Welcome back to Wayne County.
Thank you. I was just here last week.
When do you expect the contracts to be signed with the Water District?
I'm hopeful in the next couple of weeks. We're working with Steve Hamilton from the water districts who indicated they were very close, and their attorneys should be getting it to me shortly. As long as we've already verbally gone through it, we've gone through the pricing, there's no issues, no red flags. I'm hopeful that when they send it to me, it'll be signature ready, and I can do that in the next week or two.
Explain how important it is that Wayne County has the availability of gigabit speed. Because that's big news. Kind of elaborate on that a bit.
Sure. Having ultra-fast internet is going to be a very big deal. Communities that lack the access are going to miss out on economic opportunities. Businesses that want to come in and need high-speed internet might just bypass the county entirely. People may move out of the county because they can't get fast internet speeds as well. Some of the specific applications that rely on gigabit include things like blockchain technology. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the new program at Eastern Carolina, but they're putting together this blockchain program. They're trying to entice more developers and more blockchain type companies to be in this part of the state. So if Wayne County has that type of speed, you can help be attractive to those types of companies. Certainly education. If you look at where education is going online with these massive open online courses, it's much more than just having a WebEx with a professor. It's having up to 1,000 students taking the class simultaneously. You could be taking a class with a Harvard professor or a professor from Stanford and be in a classroom online with 1,000 students. Well, to do stuff like that, you need a really high-speed internet connection to see the video smoothly. Agriculture is another big need. You think of the farms today, they're so high-tech. All the data that's being collected, the artificial intelligence that's now starting to be used to determine when to plant your seeds, how much pesticide to put on, moisture control. You know, the John Deere tractors today are all GPS located. You may not need gigabit speed for that, but you do need a lot of bandwidth. So those are just some of the applications.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask how many of those blue dots were farming operations. How many of the blue dots are farming operations, you know?
Or what type of operation?
Farming operations, agriculture.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, one of our first turn-ups is going to be a peanut processor, Golden Grove.
In Mount Olive.
In Mount Olive, right. I think most of them are not.
Okay.
I think we're
Well,
just
I'm
on
surprised
one.
they're the ones that complain the loudest to me, so that's the reason I'm saying that. Is there any equipment on the inside? You showed the outside antenna. Is there like a router on the inside?
There is. So we'll put a switch and a router inside the building. We do that at our core location. So one of the terms in our tower leases is a little bit of space at the base of the tower for electronics and a small amount of power.
And just to remind everybody that you can go ahead and pay for the equipment up front and get a little cheaper rate monthly as opposed to paying for it ongoing.
Correct. So our pricing plans are if a user wants to buy their equipment up front, it's $150, one-time fee. Or if they don't want to spend that money up front, they can just lease it for $10 a month. If they do the $10 a month route, that means that we repair it and we maintain it and we're responsible for it. So they get something beyond just spreading the cost out. If they buy it up front, there's a manufacturer's warranty, but after that, it's theirs.
Might be better off leasing it then.
Yeah, almost everybody has signed up so far has leased.
Mr. Parker, maybe you need to have a talk with Mr. Edwards on contract with Wayne Water. Just have a lawyer talk.
Yes, sir, I'll do that this afternoon.
I do want to say they've been very cooperative and great to work with.
Yeah.
I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But it has taken a little while just to get all the water districts together on the same page and get, I think we're about there.
Thank you for clearing that up about the $350 versus the $30, because I was just about to have a culinary up here. The question I have for you, though, and I heard you mention the school system. In the past, I think it's the bandwidth that have kept them sometimes being able to test globally, system-wide. My question is, in your pricing, will they be on that 350 scale, and is it site by site?
It is. Yes, and it is. We'd be happy to serve a school with a full gigabit speed, 1,000 megabits up and down. And one of the other applications I didn't mention, but you sort of touched on it, is schools today can literally tour any place in the world over the internet. You could be touring the Louvre. You could be touring the Palace of Versailles in virtual reality. The students could all be wearing these headsets with a high-speed connection sitting right here in Goldsboro or Seven Springs or Grantham or anywhere else in the county and be taking those field trips over the internet if they have enough bandwidth. So yes, we would provide the service for those prices.
In a past meeting that we had with the school board, and we were discussing textbooks at the time, there was some conversation towards being able to use internet to put ebooks on, and that I think that's still a worthy discussion to move forward. And I would encourage you to reach out to the school system. I'm not up here speaking for them, but there was my colleague right here, as a matter of fact, brought that up about, I believe he did, about instead of buying textbooks, put it on the internet in some fashion that could be served. Thank you for coming to Wayne County, but don't miss anyone that could use that. Thank you.
I agree, and if I could just ad-lib here a little bit. We are strong believers in digital inclusion, that everybody deserves access to the internet, because if you don't have access, you're going to be left behind. To Commissioner Daughtry's question earlier, if Wayne County didn't have high-speed internet, you could get left behind as a county. If a child at home doesn't have broadband, they could get left behind in today's world. I'm a member of the Digital Inclusion Committee in Charlotte, where I live. I've been a member for 2.5 years, and we're very focused on getting more people access to broadband. We have that philosophy in our company, and we'll definitely portray that philosophy here too.
Any additional questions? Thank you again.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Keep us up to date. If we can help you, let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we got Sarah Stroud coming up from East Point.
Do we have a public speak? Do we skip? Let me skip public comments.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. I can't compete with internet, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share information about East Point, particularly in Wayne County.
Is this that one right there?
I think so. Oh, wait. Go back if you don't mind.
Whoops.
Let's see if it's this one.
That one?
Hang on just a second. I'm not sure.
It's like our boat, man, it's finally coming together.
Let me tell you something, gigabit, that's a big news.
Okay. And all you have to do is arrow down.
Hit enter. Okay, thank you. Again, thank you. I won't take very long on your agenda, but I'm excited to be here and share some information. I think this is my first opportunity I've had to meet with all of the commissioners, though I've met some of you individually and have met with your new county manager a couple of times and have thoroughly enjoyed the beginning of that relationship.
You've got Wilson County.
What's that?
I'm sorry.
Can we try again?
Yeah.
You might like to hear about Wilson, but maybe not. There we go. Yeah, how about that one?
There you go. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So I want to spend just a little time talking about how we got from where we were to where we are now. Some general information about East Point, and then drill it down to how what we're doing at East Point relates specifically in Wayne County, and then speak very briefly about Medicaid policy changes that are going on at the state level and the federal level that will ultimately affect the delivery of services in our counties. So just to take us back on the history of mental health in our state, from the 1970s to 2008, that's probably what most people remember. That was when we had the area programs, the mental health authorities, and the services were provided in each county by the area programs. And people still remember that because obviously that was the model for the longest period of time. But in 2008, via legislation, we were transitioned to what was known as local management entities at that time, or LMEs. And what was the distinguishing factor at that time was we were required, the area programs were required to divest of services and no longer could provide those services directly. And so that's when we began contracting those services with a provider network. That was the model that existed until 2013 when we entered into the 1915 BC waiver, which is a capitated Medicaid contract with the state, and that's how services are provided for the Medicaid members now since 2013. And that is a fully at-risk model for the MCOs. So East Point was selected to operate as an MCO beginning in January of 2013. At the current time, there are East Point and 6 other MCOs that exist across the state. Under that contract that we have with the state, we're responsible for overseeing mental health, substance use, and developmental disabilities in our catchment area. And I'm sure, as you know, our catchment area is 11 counties, with Wayne County being one of those. As I said earlier, and I'll restate it, East Point is not a service provider. We are actually prohibited by law by providing the services directly. So every service that is funded through the managed care organization East Point is actually provided through a contract that we have with a provider. And right now we have just over 330 active contracts with providers in our catchment area, and actually outside of our catchment area as well. So briefly, what does an MCO do? What are the responsibilities? There are a number of key functions that I'll just describe briefly here. Utilization management. Every service that a provider provides needs to be medically necessary for the member. And those authorization requests come into our utilization management department and are reviewed by clinicians and psychiatrists to make sure that the person is getting the service that they need by the provider. So we have a fairly large department that manages that. We also have our provider network department that manages those 330 contracts that I mentioned. We do monitoring. We make sure the providers are appropriately credentialed and in general monitor the care that providers deliver. We also have a provider monitoring and investigations unit. Believe it or not, but we have some providers who are not in it always for the right reasons. So we have a program integrity department that monitors our providers regularly for fraud and abuse. We have care coordination. So this is the closest thing we get to actually providing a service, but it is not a service. But when a member is hospitalized, we have care coordinators who pick up that person when they come out of the hospital and make sure that the handoff is appropriate to the provider, get them engaged in services, follow up, that type of thing. One of the things that is very important to our business is our call center. And that call center operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if anyone is in need of help, we have a 1-800 toll-free number. They can contact someone at that call center anytime, day or night, and get an assessment and a referral into treatment, depending on the severity of the need. There's three types: urgent, routine, and what's the other one? Emergency. So if it's an emergency, they are referred into treatment within 2 hours. Urgent is 48 hours, and routine is within 2 weeks. Then you can imagine with the 330 providers, they want to get paid. So we have a claims processing and billing department that handle all those claims that come in from the providers and turn around their money. We have a lot of stringent requirements around that, and payment is to be made within 18 days of receiving a clean claim. And then we have quality management that manages for our entire organization to make sure that everything we do is done in a quality type manner. And then just to drill down a little bit into our operations. One thing that I want to mention up front, because I think it's very important that we're transparent. There are no secrets about this, but it's been almost 5 years now. But it still follows us sometimes, and that is that East Point uncovered some fraud by our former CFO. The organization discovered it, initiated a forensic review, worked with law enforcement, and then actually, I believe it was last August, the former CFO was sentenced to 42 months in prison. While this was one of those things that we would hope we would have never had to have gone through, I think it actually made East Point a stronger organization because our internal controls are very strong right now. I actually came in as the CFO behind the former CFO and worked on cleaning up the internal controls. We have a very strong CFO now, and our system continues to improve. But I just want to skim over that very briefly to give you assurance about that you can feel confident about the finances. Right now, over our 4 locations, we have 302 employees. Our locations are Lumberton, Rocky Mount, Kinston, and Beulahville. 22 of our employees live in Wayne County. Our overall budget stands at right at $325 million, and of that, almost $275 million is made up of Medicaid. The fund balance is just over $125 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but out of that, there is only 32.8 that is unassigned. The state likes for us to hold about 45 days of operating cash in our fund balance unassigned, and our operating expenses run about $25 million, $26 million a month. So you can see we're on target for that. I've mentioned our contract with the state, and via that contract, as you might imagine, we have a lot of requirements in that contract that we're required to meet. And I just want to go through a few of those and tell you how we perform against the contract. I mentioned the call center. We're required to answer the calls, every single call that comes into that call center within 30 seconds. The state requirement on that is 95% of the calls. We answer 99% within 30 seconds. Any organization our size dealing with the type of things we deal with, we're going to have complaints, and we do get those. We're required to resolve them within 30 days, 90% of those. We respond and resolve those within 30 days at 100%. I mentioned the care coordination. We're required to assign 85% of hospital readmits to care coordination. We perform at 100%. Those claims that I mentioned, we're required to process within 30 days. The requirement is 90%, and we perform at 99%. Then I kind of want to drill down and talk a little bit about Wayne County specifically. So on this pie chart, you can see Wayne County in the lighter blue on the upper left-hand side. Wayne County is actually our second largest county with 15% of the population. Wayne County's Medicaid population, you probably know, is just over 35,000 out of our total, which is almost 265,000.
Pardon me. Would you repeat that part?
Sure. So Wayne County has just over 35,000 Medicaid lives out of our total of almost 265,000. And so let's translate those members into actual claims paid on their behalf. Again, going back to how we determine who gets services, that is completely based on medical necessity, but as it works out, Wayne County also received 15% of the claims that we paid in fiscal year 16, and also in fiscal year 17. So I think it's interesting how the numbers often line up with the population totals. Looking at the actual numbers, these are the actual claims that were paid on behalf of Wayne County members in 16 and 17. And you can see the 3 types of funding we have. We have Medicaid B, Medicaid C, and then state funding. And the state funding covers the indigent. Those are the people who do not have Medicaid. Our state funds continue to be cut by the General Assembly, but yet we are expected to maintain those state services at previous levels. The Medicaid B is primarily mental health services and substance use services. some developmental disabilities. The Medicaid C is, by and large, all developmental disability services. You can see from fiscal year 16 to 17, your claims for Wayne County increased by over $5 million. In the box below the table, we have the amount that Wayne County invests in your citizens, and that's $42,000, and all of those funds are dedicated to the Family Drug Court. So the last thing I want to talk about is what we are actually investing in Wayne County. So you have those 35,000 Medicaid lives. Out of those lives, there were over 5,000 people who actually presented and received a service in fiscal year 17 on the Medicaid side. On the state side, or the indigent side, there were just over 1,700 people. And the calls that came into our call center from Wayne County citizens, just over 3,500 in fiscal year 17. The provider network that I talked about in Wayne County, physically located, there are 28 different providers at 53 sites. There are 10 LIPs, or licensed independent practitioners, who operate solo, and there are 2 hospitals, and of course that's Wayne and Cherry. We have 1 provider who accepts walk-in providers, and as I have mentioned earlier, 331 providers. The clinic that does the walk-in appointments, as you know, I'm sure that's Waynesboro Family Clinic. Many of our services are now provided in a community setting rather than having people actually come into an office, and some of those that are that we provide most often are ACT team. That's Assertive Community Treatment Team, and that's a whole treatment team. There's a psychiatrist there, as well as social workers, and community support team, and intensive in-home. All of those are community-based services. Currently, there is no wait list for behavioral health services in Wayne County. So what that means, if somebody calls the call center or presents with a provider, they are being treated. You mentioned the opioid resolution that you're going to do later, and of course that the opioid crisis is very much in the forefront of what you're concerned with and what we're concerned with. Recently, we donated 80 Narcan kits to the Wayne County Emergency Services to help prevent the overdoses. We also, in the last year, installed, in collaboration with the Mental Health Department, a kiosk at the Health Department, and people who are actually reporting to the Health Department, or they can just show up there and do an assessment online, and there's also a phone they can pick up and get to our call center immediately. That option is also available on an app. People can do that that way as well. There's a phone number. We're very involved in Wayne County in a number of different ways. We have your community liaison in the back corner, Vanessa Hill, and in 17 we made presentations at 22 events. About 1,500 people attend. Some of them were the gang conference that was held at Mount Olive in your county, the annual State of the Child Conference, and of course we have ongoing law enforcement crisis intervention training that's held at the community college. And we have representatives from the police department and the sheriff's office that attend. We also attended at least 50 other community events. Where this will go in the future is the big question. Right now, the state has submitted a new waiver application. It's a 1915 waiver, and it provides for the integration of physical and behavioral health. I mentioned early in the presentation that our system is a capitated at-risk system. The physical side is still fee-for-service. This waiver will move that into a capitated risk-based system as well. Exactly what will happen with the members we serve and how that will shake out, we'll have to stay tuned with the General Assembly to see exactly how they move forward with that. Right now, the plan is for there to be commercial plans coming in to manage the physical health and the less severe behavioral health, with something they're calling tailored plans to handle the more severely impaired that we work with now. But there's a lot of questions there. So hopefully as that works its way through the system, maybe I'll have an opportunity to come back and share more with you as we know more about that. There continue to be fund balance rates. The General Assembly is very interested in the fund balance that the MCOs have acquired through the savings that is to be actually reinvested in the citizens. And as I mentioned, the privatization of the Medicaid is being planned. I know I ran through a lot of information very quickly. I'll be happy to answer any questions or any further discussion you'd like.
Questions, comments?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
I have several questions, and I'm not sure that I have them in the right sequence, but I heard you say there were no wait lists. Correct. When you use that term, do you mean there's no wait list on paper, or there are no wait lists on the clients needing services? I mean, you know, I just want to get a clear understanding of what you mean by no wait list.
So, both. So if a person needs services, we have providers that can take them in, and they're medically necessary. We have providers who can take people in.
So a no wait list might mean that you have their name down and they'll be served within 5 days or 6 days or
perhaps
2 hours or.
Correct.
Because, and the reason I ask that question is I'm leading to something. In my personal experience, medical service in Wayne County is getting to be at a time premium. Might not use that correctly. I've had the personal occasion to look for optometrists who also had an ophthalmologist, and the closest I could get was over 30 days. And I've recently been to some medical facilities that you got a 2 or 3 hour wait time sitting there waiting. And I asked a question at a Board of Health meeting that I was at. What's the problem with what was seemed to be the problem with getting medical services? And the answer was that doctors from other countries can't seem to pass our regulations. I think that's what it was explained to me. But some of the countries that doctors want to come from have a higher percentage of students succeeding in math and science, so that was sort of confusing. And when you talked about the wait time, that sort of spurred my thought about that. Secondly, you named, I believe, 5 locations that you all have offices for. Help me with it. I'm one of the younger members of this board. You did have an office you had offices in Wayne County at one time?
We did.
And you all elected to move to another location?
Actually, we were asked to leave. I believe DSS moved into that building.
Do you see that as, because Wayne County does not have a location, has that affected the services to Wayne County?
Absolutely not. So the buildings where we have people, those are all administrative folks. As I've said repeatedly, we don't provide the services. So the service providers that were in Wayne County are still in Wayne County.
So that's just, it was the administrative move, not the
Correct.
Actual providers
Correct.
being less served.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
I wanted to just say one thing about the wait list. So going back to how quickly someone gets into services, it kind of goes back to that initial assessment of the emergent, urgent, and routine. So if someone's need is emergent, we have a service called Mobile Crisis that can be dispatched to your home and be there within 2 hours. That's the requirement. Let's say you're homicidal or threatening suicide or some emergent issue. The more routine issues, there can be a 2-week time before you're actually seen at a facility. And then, as I said, the urgent is within 48 hours. So you're assessed based on your acuity level at the time of presentation.
And the opportunity to be served by one of your providers has to do with family income and all that?
No. Medicaid is, for lack of a better word, it's an entitlement. So if someone meets the medical necessity, that service is provided.
So one last question. If I have a Medicaid card, could I be served by East Point, regardless of my income?
Medicaid? Yes. Not Medicare, Medicaid.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Because Medicaid is based upon income. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you.
Good questions. Thank you.
I have one question, Mr. Chair, real quick. We, here in Wayne County, and of course all over the state, we have an issue with mental health. Inmates, people being arrested, and it seems to be at a crisis level in our county. What to do with these mental health people when we arrest them or whatever. Does East Point, are you playing an important part to try to resolve that here in Wayne County?
So I'm going to turn to Craig. I know that we are plugged in.
Right. With the county, and really Carol's leading this charge for the county, and I appreciate the work Carol's doing. It's called the Stepping Up Initiative, and we're working with the Sheriff's Department and working with the jail to see how we evaluate those that go into jails. And you know, because a lot of people, one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard are spending life sentences 30 days at a time.
Right.
And part of it is because they'll get off their meds, go on a misdemeanor, get in jail, we get them back on their meds and everything's fine, and then as soon as they get out, they get off their meds, and you repeat the process. So we're working with a group in the county. Carol, do you want to?
Well, I just want to say that having East Point active in this is going to be not only huge but imperative for this Stepping Up initiative to work, as well as the hospital. We have the full support of our local law enforcement, and we're trying to bring together. Unfortunately, there are a lot of different small facets out there that are not working together, and that's what we're trying to get accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing, thank you very much, I would add is we have just issued, I think in the last week, an RFI for Family Drug Court 2. We have some money that was designated to use in the opioid fight, and we have issued that. I know Mr. Honeycutt got a copy, and I think it also went to the judge. So hopefully you'll be responding to that, and there'll be some additional funds coming there as well.
Okay. Thank you.
So, just a quick comment and maybe a suggestion or a request. Back several years ago, we did have a shortage of facilities, and unfortunately had to ask you all to vacate some office space that we had that we needed to move DSS into. And that was very unfortunate, but we didn't expect you to move out of the county. As you can see from your numbers, Wayne County does represent 15% of your services that you provide, and we would hope that you would consider relocating some of those positions back here in Wayne County And I recognize that you are operating really independently, but we didn't want to run you out of the county, so to speak, if I may say. So looking in the future, we would hope maybe you could find some office space here and bring some of those positions back.
Thank you.
Following up on that, the space situation, is that an initiative that we need to put in place, or is that something that you all done?
So I'll just reiterate, because I think it is so important for you to understand that while the presence in Wayne County that's something that is important. The folks who still work for East Point are still located in Wayne County. The services are located in Wayne County. At the current time, we have a lease. We didn't move far. We moved to Lenoir County and relocated. So we have a current lease with that. Did upfit on a building there. So at the current time, we are not looking at relocation. But I also know in this business, things change every day. If I know one thing for certain, that is what I know. So I appreciate your comment, and we'll certainly keep it in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, I also have a handout, if I could maybe just leave it and ask you to pass it down. It kind of summarizes some of the key points we made today.
Can you send me a copy of your document?
I absolutely will. And the jump pad. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, let's jump back to public comments. And public comments are now open. If you'll give us your name, your address, and your phone number. And public comments are available. You got 4 minutes.
Wait until I start the timer.
Good morning, Chairman, Wayne County Commissioners. My name is Charles Wright, 200 Tanya Drive, Goldsboro, 919-273-2099. I come before the Commissioners today to urge you to address your public hearing procedures. I urge the Commissioners to examine the way they execute the requirements of public hearings. Establish a reasonable time period for public hearings notification. I received notification of this public hearing in today's newspaper approximately 6 a.m., as I am one to wake up early in the morning and start off my day by reading several news articles. And maybe everyone in Wayne County doesn't do that. Indicate where a concerned citizen can obtain a copy of the proposed document for their timely review. Consider online. How can a citizen comment on a new document or what's being produced or talked about at the public hearing without having the opportunity to review, and attempt to understand before the public hearing? 4, consider establishing a more reasonable time period than greater than 4 minutes for public hearings. These mandated hearings all tend to have greater impact on Wayne County citizens and should be given the highest priority and consideration. A lot of counties around the state separate their public hearings from their public comments. Public comments, anyone can get up and talk about anything, oranges, how the weather is, and that's okay, which I don't recommend you discontinuing. But when you have public hearings, a lot of municipalities tend to offer greater latitude and give certain speakers enough time to express. Consider providing Wayne County citizens the opportunity to submit written questions and comments and ensure they are answered and discussed among the commissioners. Several times over the last couple of years, I've always submitted written questions and comments, and I don't receive a phone call or a postcard or anything back to even acknowledge that they were read, much less answered. If you're going to have a public hearings and limit the time, at least offer the citizen an opportunity in good faith to leave questions with you, and then have someone from your staff or office reply to that person, at least acknowledging that they had legitimate questions, and to try to answer them when possible. And consider postponing all voting on public matters if citizens will not provide advance notification of such hearing and give the opportunity to examine the source document they are being asked to comment on. That includes today's meeting. If you feel anything of what I said has merit, put this public hearing or your vote on it off to a time to when at least a citizen such as myself or anyone else that's out there have the opportunity to read the document that you're voting on. But if we didn't know about it until 3 hours before 9 o'clock, it's hardly enough time to gather information about it. And I will keep my presence short and end at this point. I thank you for your attention, and as always, I like to give the commissioners time if they have a question or a comment they wish to make to me while I'm at the podium. And I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, sir. And if you'll wait until I get back. Okay.
Okay, good morning, commissioners. Thank the Lord for being able to come before you this morning. I gave you a packet of information.
State your name.
I'm sorry, I haven't done this before. My name is Keith Copeland. I'm a resident of Wayne County. I stay 1100 Sunset Drive here in Goldsboro. And is that all you need, or?
That's good.
Okay. So I think I don't need to go through my first few things here in my packet, because I think Mr. Wright just covered that, and that is about whether or not citizens had the opportunity to come before this board, since you have your meetings in the morning when most of the population actually is at work at this time. So I would ask that people would consider maybe even having one of these meetings in the evening, so that other people could attend and be able to come forth and say things. I don't know, that may be a policy that you have, but I'm just putting that out there. But why I'm really here, I came to respond to something that I read in the paper, in the Goldsboro News Argus, about something that had been said at a board meeting in regards to put your money where your mouth is, I think is how it was termed. So basically, I'm not here to offend anybody, and I hope nobody is offended. But I do know my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, he offended a lot of people just simply by telling the truth. So I'm going to put that out there first. But I do want to say that I attended that meeting, and one thing that was stated by a commissioner, and I'm not calling anybody's names anywhere in this, was that the board's decision, talking about the school board's decision, was misguided and wrong, and that many legislators may conclude they were misled about financial needs by this action. So I wanted to say, yeah, it's true, the legislators, after consulting with the people who deal with education, they listened to them and they walked it back. So on a local level, I hope you're listening to this because our education experts are the Board of Education. And so they're the ones, they have doctors, they have people with history and experience in the school system. So if they're making recommendations, then maybe this body should be listening to them. Okay, we can't just, say, hey, you didn't say what we wanted you to say, so we're going to, jump on you about it. We need to listen to them because they are the experts. And then, so they voted 5-2 to go ahead with what they were doing. So these are people that don't all the time vote together. Okay, so I wish you would take that into consideration as well. These are people that don't vote together. Then there were some things that I thought were not exactly true, because I see I only got 1 minute left. It was something said about the teachers the qualified teachers having to move from their positions. But that was not, and I was there at that meeting, I didn't hear it that way. What I heard was new teachers who were being hired into the system would be placed into those low-performing schools. And the other thing I want to say is, we're just talking about low-performing schools. There are 12 of them on the list, but what about those who are failing? There are 3 failing schools. And so we need to think about all of the students of this county. And I like how one of the commissioners said, hey, I was upset, but you know what? We got to work together. And so that's why I'm here before this board. Regardless of whether you like what somebody says, you still have to work with that board, and I don't think you should just discredit them or dismiss what they have to say in your working with them.
Thank you.
That's what I have to say.
Anyone else this morning? You're next, Barry.
All right. My name is Barry Merrill. I live at 432 Club Knowles Road in Dudley, North Carolina, and my phone number is 919-922-1499. I have a special opportunity, which I hope y'all can appreciate. My daughter has decided that she wanted to have some babies, and hopefully in the next 10 days we'll be blessed with 2 new babies in my household. Marilyn and I will be helping to raise those kids. Unfortunately, as it stands right now, we live in Dudley, and our grandchildren in a few years will be attending, I hope, a Brogden primary school, which today, along with 6 other elementary schools in this county, is low performing. And my daughter has said she does not want her babies to attend a low performing school. She's an honor graduate of NC State University and a master's graduate of NC State University and a teacher at Wayne Community College. So she understands the importance of education and has dedicated her life to that. It is not a badge of honor that we have a low tax rate in Wayne County and 6 of our 14 elementary schools are low performing. That's a responsibility that the state has to provide my children with a good quality of education, and it's something which has been the responsibility has not been delegated, but the authority to act on that has been delegated to the state. I thought the gentleman from the Association of County Commissioners who spoke to your joint meeting at the new MAC Center did an excellent job and talked about that partnership and that responsibility that comes to you. But again, I'm going to say I don't want my kids, like some other parents in southern Wayne County who have said, we don't have a good quality school, so I'm going to send my kids to Rosewood, or I'm going to send my kids to North Duplin, or I'm going to send my kids to Wayne Country Day. And unfortunately, some of our parents have said that for a lot of reasons, and that's something a bad mark on all of us. But I would encourage you again, and I appreciate comments that you've made, Mr. Daugherty, and you've made, Mr. Pate, about working with the school board to try to help our schools. And Mr. Gurley, I heard you make comments about how you want to be someone supportive of education. I think all of you do. All of you are good men. I know that, and I've talked with each of you individually. I hear your hearts as you serve on this board. We got a two-tiered education system in Wayne County, and Mr. Cromartie talked about it the last meeting I was at. There's a core area, and it runs from southern Wayne up in southern Goldsboro and in parts of Fremont, of people who are not they don't have the opportunities. They don't have the opportunities, and the poverty is too dramatic here. Let's change that, gentlemen, and I'll work as hard as anybody to help make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Anyone else? Come on up, please.
Good morning. Excuse me, my allergies are acting up. I am Sylvia Barnes, and I live at 1708 Laurel Street here in the city of Goldsboro. I came this morning to speak on, or to ask you all if you would consider having one of your meetings in the evening. I did not know that someone else was going to ask that. A couple of months ago, I had asked one of the county commissioners if you all had ever had evening meetings or considered having a morning meeting and an evening meeting to give more people the opportunity to attend your meetings. I do go out as a part of my responsibility with the NAACP and ask people to come and attend meetings. And many people that I speak to say that they cannot come to a 9 o'clock meeting. So again, I am asking that if you all would consider maybe having one of your meetings in the morning and one in the evening. In my conversation, it was, stated, well, when we had evening meetings, we did not have any more people in the morning than we did in the evening. I just want to say that I think that should be on the table. You all are elected by the people, and I think you should be available so that anybody that want to come that live in Wayne County can have that opportunity. I thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? All right. Public comments is closed. Let's move on to the appointment committee. Mr. Gurley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We met this morning. We'd like to recommend the appointment of Vanessa Hill, Kimberly McGuire to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, and I'd like to put this form of a motion.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you.
We'd like to recommend the appointment of Jonathan Chavos to the Latino Council. I'd like to put this in form of a motion.
Again, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
I'd like to recommend the appointment of Nancy Riaz to the Wayne County Public Library Board of Advisors, and I'll put this in form of a motion.
Motion on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
And we'd like to recommend the reappointments of Fran Casey and Brenda Britt to the Wayne County Council on Aging, and I'll put this in form of a motion.
Okay. There's another motion on the floor. Discussion. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you.
That concludes.
Okay. All right, moving on to unfinished business, and this is something we tabled before. We were talking about the sale of surplus property.
Yes, sir. At the intersection of Thoroughfare Road and Central Heights, we do have a property that is jointly owned by the city and the county. We do have a bid amount of $17,600, and it is recommended the approval of that sale.
Is there a motion to approve? Go ahead.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Okay, consent agenda, we went over that at length in the open session. Somebody else have any discussion there? If not,
Motion to approve.
motion to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. New business, motion to approve proclamation for organ donation month. And I think we have a presenter here, is that correct? Hello? She's back there.
Do we have a presenter for the organ donation month? Yes.
I recognized her when she came in.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This morning, I am coming before the county commissioners solo. I'm coming by myself because, as the commissioner pointed out, I recognized her when she came in. And I'm a bit teary-eyed this morning, and you all just have to be with me because I realize this is the first time I presented to you since I celebrated you. In August of 2017, and I have candy that I need to get rid of. You caught me. Excuse me. Thank you. I am Dr. Sandra Coley, for those of you who do not recognize me. In August of 2017, I was asked to present at the National Transplant Multicultural Conference, and every state was represented. And as I made my presentation, which was a PowerPoint, I showed a picture, and you won't be able to see it, but I brought it with me. And there's a picture of the group with the Wayne County Commissioners. It was one of the initiatives that we do. That initiative got a lot of feedback, a lot of people clapped, and I've heard from some states and 2 counties here in North Carolina. And when one presentation was made and she said to her commissioners, this is already happening in Wayne County. And I was just so happy. And so I just thank God for you guys helping Wayne County to increase the awareness of organ and tissue donation, because it is important. It is very important. And as of today, Goldsboro, we have, I want to think we're in like the top percentage of dialysis patients in North Carolina. Our dialysis centers here in Goldsboro are full. And some of those patients are there 2 and some 3 times a week. So again, thank you for helping with this initiative. Donate Life Month 2018. I would like to read a proclamation asking the county commissioners if you would proclaim Wayne County the month of April 2018 as Donate Life Month in Wayne County. Donate Life Month 2018 by the Wayne County Commissioners, a proclamation. Whereas according to the United Network of Organ Sharing, more than 114,891 people are waiting for organ transplant nationally, and 3,000 of those people are in North Carolina. And whereas an average of 20 people waiting transplant die each day because there's a severe shortage of organ donors. And whereas every 10 minutes, another name is added to the National Transplant waiting list, and the list is growing faster than the rate of organ donation. And whereas providing facts and dispelling myths are key to making an informed decision about becoming a donor and increasing the number of people who sign up as donors. And whereas the North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicles plays a critical role with 4.8 million North Carolinians in the state's donor registry having registered when they received their North Carolina's driver's license, making it the 6th largest registry in the country. And whereas one organ donor can save the lives of up to 8 people and improve more than 50 lives through tissue, blood, bone marrow, and coronary donation. And whereas North Carolinians are encouraged to get the facts about donation and discuss their wishes with their families and physicians, sign up as donors via the North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicle by putting a heart on their driver's license or enrolling online at donatelifenc.org. And whereas Vidant Medical Center's Transplant Center is a leader in providing life-saving transplants with patients cared for by a team of experts, including surgeons, nurse coordinators, social workers, infectious disease specialists, nutritionists, and pathologists. And whereas Carolina Donor Services is the federally designated organ procurement organization, serving 7.2 million people in 77 counties of North Carolina and Danville, Virginia, and serving over 100 hospitals and 4 transplant centers that perform heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas, and intestine transplants to maximize the passing of the heroic gift of life from one human being to another, organ and tissue donation. And whereas the County of Wayne hopefully joins the healthcare professionals, volunteers, educators, government agencies, faith-based and community groups, and private organizations in an effort to boost the number of organ tissue, blood, bone marrow, coronary, and stem cell donors throughout North Carolina. Now therefore be it resolved. And the proclamation and the signing is at the bottom of the document. And before I conclude, I just want to say to all of those that are in attendance that during the month of April, I will be publishing my first book. And my book is dispelling some of the myths surrounding organ donation. There is a lot of myth. For example, African Americans do not donate. African Americans do donate. And you have to get the book to read why and how many. Thank you.
Mr. Raycott.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve this proclamation. I just ask the rest of the commissioners to please approve this proclamation. It's in form of a motion, sir.
I have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment,
sure, go ahead.
Sir. Thank you so much for coming before us. I've got a granddaughter that's on the list. And unless you or someone in your family is affected by this, you have a tendency to take it for granted. I always did. I knew of organ transplant donors and all, but it really, until it hits home, you do not realize what the importance of this is. And the sad thing is, for one person to live, another family has got to sacrifice, and it's tough on both parties. But thank you again for what you do for this program, and God bless.
Yes, ma'am. I know that you say you were putting a book out, but since sometimes what folk auditorily hear and visually see will stick with them a lot longer, and especially if they don't get a chance to read the book. You made a comment that about minorities participating in the organ donation and not participating. What was your point? What point are you making? I mean, just for the public.
For the public. In the proclamation, we talk about increasing education and dispelling myths. And there's a myth. The myth is, and if you go to our website, you'll see it. There's a myth that African Americans do not donate because of mistrust of the clinical system. But that's a myth. And it's a myth because African Americans do donate per the population in the United States of America as every other race. Wow. And so it's how the number was interpreted. It's what sticks with people more so than anything. It's how the numbers are interpreted. And so in the book, not to give the book away, I expose that, and it is on the website because a lot of people overlook that. And not only an organ and tissue donation, but across the board.
So you're not, the myth is not, because I think I maybe was the myth. I thought, I was thinking that the myth was believing in the process not in the number of participants. I was just wondering which one. I thought you were alluding that there was some myth that minorities did not believe in the process.
No. Now, when you use the word belief, that's the next chapter in the book, where we talk about religion and the religions that believe and that way. Now, where you may be going, and I am so happy to share, because I'm hoping it's that, getting you guys excited about the book, is that because of the mistrust historically in the medical arena regarding African Americans, there's a fear. And it's a fear that the theologian Dr. Herman Thurman talked about in his book, The Disinherited. And so that's in the book as well. And so there's a difference between the myth and cultural understandings and beliefs, so forth and so on. Did that answer your question, or are you still curious?
Well,
you may have to get two books.
You're in the right direction. I think, and ma'am, my question was purely so that the listening public out there could get a better understanding of what you meant by myth and where it was leading to. Because no matter of our educational, economic status, there probably is some reluctance to donate organs that don't really belong to you.
Oh, yes, of course. And it has nothing to do with color. Everybody, that happens. Yes, yes, it has nothing to do with color.
I was just going to say, I've been an organ donor for many years. When you go to meet your maker, your spirit's gone. If your physical body can save somebody else, why would you not do it? It ain't going to do me no good. I'm gone. I hope I'm going that way. But anyway, Mr. Aycock.
And what you're saying is exactly right, Mr. Pate. If you do a little bit of research, an organ is an organ. And like you said, inside, we're all the same. We all got the same hearts. We all got the same lungs. We all got the same livers. I mean, it's do a little bit of research. I mean, it's not who you are, what color you are, what denomination you are, whether you're Republican, Democrat. That when it comes to organ donation, we're all the same. We're all the same. Thank you so much.
We are, and I really do appreciate all of your comments. And again, I do deal with some pretty tough issues in my book, and it has nothing to do with any of us who are here today. It is just common practice. And I have in my book a picture that dates back to the 2nd century of a transplant. And the leg, a black leg, is being transplanted onto the body of a white. But they were not Americans. We were not here. This was not here. And so this is something historically. And we have to look at it historically to see how these attitudes and behaviors just transition and is right now in 2018. And no, we do not live in an ideal society. No, we don't. We know that. All of us know that. We know all of this. And then it comes down not just black, white, Democratic, Republican, but we've got to learn to work together, because one day we're going, and at the end of the day, it's who you were, what you believed. Did you do right? Did you do what was right? That's it. And I'm asking, again, for the county commissioners, thank you, because I do believe organs save lives. It happened in my family and in my church. I am a member of Goldsboro Chapel, Free Will Baptist Church, and we've had 4 people in our church to receive kidneys. 4 people, and one of them is an officer in the church. The other sings in the choir. Yes, I'm standing here not just for those 4 because they go to my church, but for others and those 200 people in Goldsboro, Wayne County who's on dialysis 2 and 3 times a week. That's why I'm here. I don't see color. I see hearts.
One last thing before you leave, and I know we, in the end of it, it became something about color and race and so forth.
But it's not.
My question was more along the spiritual line, and I just want to leave with that in mind. Mine was along the spiritual line.
Oh, yes.
And would folk be reluctant to donate based upon
religion,
spirituality, religion versus color? I'll take, if I needed a white live, I'd take any live.
It's not gonna matter because we want to live.
So, but no, mine was purely religion. When you talked about myth, Bell, mine was more in tune of a spiritual versus.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Chapter 4, you're gonna love it. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we got a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you, and thank you for coming. See you next year.
Yes, thank you. You guys have made history. Yes.
One last thing. When Oprah comes and does a presentation, she gives away a book. I was just wondering.
I have to be invited back for that.
I thought she gave away cards.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Number 2, to adopt a resolution for a statewide referendum. You want to hit on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we've done a lot of talking over the past few months, is about school construction and the need for new school construction, not only in Wayne County, but also across the state of North Carolina. There is discussion at the state level with House Bill 866 and the companion bill, Senate Bill 542, for a statewide bond referendum of $1.9 billion. And we have really stated that we need part of that, and that needs to be passed. And this resolution would support the General Assembly in trying to get this on the bond for November.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor to adopt the resolution, or adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
One thing I want to point out here. The need is in excess of $8.1 billion, and the bond is recommended at $1.9 billion.
Yes, sir.
So as you can see, we're talking about less than a fourth of the needs would be covered by the bond. So we're still behind the 8 ball. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry you brought that up. Anything else? All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Number 3 was a walk-on. I was asked by the Patriots Coalition to adopt a resolution for the Vietnam Veterans Day, which is always the last Thursday in March. And do you have that down there already?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I think Mr. Mayor was going to read that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was in the military during the Vietnam conflict. Unfortunately, it's taken 45 years since the end of the Vietnam conflict for the Vietnam veterans to be properly welcomed home. A lot of my buddies that I served with, I did not have to go to Vietnam because of college deferment, but a lot of my buddies went, and when they came into Raleigh-Durham, a lot of my buddies here in Wayne County, when they came into Raleigh-Durham, they were spit on, they were cussed at, some had urine thrown at them. I have documented evidence. So I'm so thankful that finally, over the last few years, the last 10 years maybe, we in Wayne County have stepped up to the plate and are giving these veterans the honorable coming home party that they deserve. It's my honor to read this Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day proclamation. Whereas 2018 represents the 45th anniversary of the end of the American involvement in the Vietnam conflict, and whereas 2018 marks the 53rd anniversary of the start of the ground campaign in Vietnam, when President Lyndon Johnson authorized the landing of the 9th Marine Expeditionary Brigade to defend the Da Nang Air Base in South Vietnam. As whereas thousands of brave Americans served our country in this conflict with courage, honor, and valor, and whereas more than 58,000 individuals made the ultimate sacrifice in Vietnam, and more than 300,000 more were wounded in combat, and whereas 1,626 Americans are still missing and unaccounted for from the Vietnam conflict, and their families, friends, and fellow veterans still endure uncertainty concerning their fate. And whereas in 1982, the Vietnam War Memorial was dedicated to commemorate those members of the United States Armed Forces who died or were missing in action in Vietnam. And whereas the Vietnam War was an issue among the people of the United States, so that the crossfire of public debate about the involvement of the United States in the Vietnam War deprived many members of the United States Armed Forces who served bravely and faithfully for the United States during the Vietnam War. They were deprived of the support and appreciation for their service to our country. And whereas the United States Senate officially designated March 30th as Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day, and encouraged the people of the United States to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities that promote awareness of the contributions of veterans who served in the United States Armed Forces in Vietnam and the importance of helping such veterans readjust to civilian life. Now therefore be it resolved, the Wayne County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims March 29, 2018 as Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day in Wayne County, and urges all citizens to join in this special observance and take the opportunity to honor and thank our Vietnam veterans for all they have given in their service to our country, adopted this 29th day of March 2018. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept this proclamation as read.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there any additional discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you, Mr. Mayo. All right, let's move on to the work session, the proposed flood ordinances. And Mr. Chip, will you come on up? Since you're writing them, I think.
Flood damage prevention ordinance. Back in about 2 years ago, the FEMA redid our flood maps. I don't know if you remember that, but they were never adopted or made effective. The chairman was sent a letter, and the county manager was sent a letter that stated our flood maps would become effective June the 20th of 2018. Along with that, we needed to adopt a new flood damage prevention ordinance for the county, and with it comes a lot of definition, clarification, things of that nature. I don't expect you to take any action today. We know I just handed this document out to you. What I would like for you to do is take it home and read it. We come back at the next meeting with a summary. I've got a summary of changes that I'll also provide you that clarifies what mandated definitions they're going to add to our ordinance. We also, Wayne County, let me go back in history a little bit. Wayne County started participating in the National Flood Insurance Program back in the 80s. The first flood maps were 1983 that went in effect for Wayne County. With that, the first flood damage prevention ordinance was enacted, and then that ordinance was redone in 2005, so this would be a 2018 edition. In order to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, you have to have this ordinance in place and these maps adopted. So that's a requirement. They're not telling you that you have to do it, but if you're going to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, and if your citizens are going to have access to flood insurance, you're going to have these ordinances in place. So what happens is the flood insurance people go out and rate your county every 5 years and give it a rating. And that rating will dictate what premiums your citizens will pay for their flood insurance policies. Wayne County has always maintained a high rating. It's had a good discount of about 20% off the insurance premiums across the board. And we just went through another rating, and they changed the way some of the points are calculated that would create your rating. We don't know the outcome of that yet. They have not notified us. I anticipate that that will go down some. I don't know if it'll drop the percentage of discount or not. But there are some things in here we can do in addition to help bolster that rating back. And one of them is we added in here, and it is an option for your election, to not allow building on field in a flood zone. That accounts for 225 CRS credits towards our ISO rating. So that would help us to keep that insurance discount where it's at. I did vet these changes through the planning board. It's been through their review. They agreed to forward it to you for your review. I ask that you take them into consideration. We come back at the next meeting, put it under old business. I'll go over the changes that are the big changes. I've got a document that tells you which ones are mandatory and which ones are optional. We only have 2 additions that are optional in my proposal. One is that no build on field, and a conversion agreement where if somebody elevates a home, they have to sign an agreement that they don't convert the lower level into living space, which we currently do not have, and that will give us some additional points. So with that, I'll let you take that back home, and we'll come back at a next meeting under old business, unless you have any questions that you'd like to ask me now.
Has Mr. Parker had a chance to look at it?
Yes.
Looks good to you?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
This is just for the ordinance part. It doesn't change the floodplain map at all, is that right?
Yes. FEMA changed the maps. And there are some changes. There's nothing that I see on the maps that are major. There was some area inside of Goldsboro that changed, and they had them look at it further. That's what delayed it for 2 years from being enacted. But now they did send us a letter back at the 1st of January. It said you have 6 months to get this written and get this adopted. And not only do I have to do it for Wayne County, I have to do it for all the other towns in the county too. So I'm doing it for Fremont, Pikeville, Walnut Creek, Seven Springs, and Mount Olive. Eureka does not participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, but the other towns do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The reason I asked that question is that out of the 86 families and change that we have that haven't gotten the FEMA buyout yet, some of the issues that some of these citizens are having is that their home was flooded, but it's not in the floodplain, and they're having one heck of an issue trying to get help. So that's why I was asking, has the floodplain changed? Because some of these homes were never in the floodplain, but I've got one citizen that has been told that you need to get the floodplain changed. How in the world is a citizen going to get that changed? It's not going to happen. So I'm not going to open a can of worms here. I am saying that we still got problems, as I mentioned last commissioner meeting, with 86 families, I believe is what you said, that is still waiting on the FEMA buyout here in Wayne County. And I was just asking if these flood maps have been changed, it may help some of those that
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Actually, in that hazard mitigation grant program, there was no preference paid for whether it was in a flood zone or not. If they were damaged beyond 50% due to Hurricane Matthew, they were included in the original pool of applicants. So that wasn't one of the requirements. It was under Hurricane Floyd, but it was not in Matthew. Well, so some of the maps, and we do have some areas that I've questioned, and we actually sent an official request to restudy one area, and were denied that request unless the county wanted to fund the study, hydrology study there further.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, this is actually the policy, the ordinance that you have to put in place in order for your citizens to have access to flood insurance, period. If we don't adopt it by June the 20th, flood insurance policies will cease at that point. So it is imperative that we want to have time to review it. We have plenty of time. There are public laws on the way public hearings are run. You have to establish that public hearing. We have to run a notice in the newspaper. We have to notify the property owners that are affected. It's handled just like a zoning case, like you're zoning a piece of property. Flood zones are handled that same way by general statute. We have to notify those property owners by first-class mail, and you hold the public hearing. On the bottom of that public hearing notice is a name, an email address, and a phone number. If you have questions before the public hearing, you can direct those comments to that person, and those questions will be answered prior to the public hearing or at the public hearing. So you have the opportunity to speak up prior to the public hearing in case you cannot make it to the meeting. And usually in the case, a lot of times if you have objections to an ordinance, you don't vote on it at that same time. You withhold your vote until a future date so that you hear all complaints or all questions or comments. So those are options of the board. But we do include on the bottom of that public hearing notice a phone number and an email address and a person's name to direct questions to.
Chip, the only thing I've got a concern about is this no-fill policy. Do we know how many acres are going to be affected in Wayne County? Because it's generally been accepted practice that not in the floodway, but in a floodplain, you could go in and actually raise up that area where you built the home to be above the floodplain. And that's very common in eastern North Carolina. You see that a great deal in eastern North Carolina where fill is brought in to raise up that level. And if we pass an ordinance with a no-fill requirement, I'm wondering how much property are we losing the availability of developing?
Right. You just have to make that determination whether that's the step you want to take. It does provide quite a bit of points if we adopt that.
You may accumulate points, but if you are not able to develop a tenth of the county.
It doesn't say you can't develop it. You can't develop it on field. You can build a foundation system that elevates the structure to base flood elevation plus 2 feet.
But I think we need to know about how many acres we're talking about. You reckon there's some way to find that out?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Well, I don't want to.
I don't know. I don't have that number on my head on the top.
But it would be a lot.
Yes. Over 20,000 acres.
Over 20,000?
Yes, sir.
That's a whole lot.
Yes, but these are areas of flood zone, and every time you fill a flood zone and you don't have a no-rise certification from an engineer, a flood occurs, you're pushing that water on somebody else. You're pushing that water on your neighbor. You're pushing that water further downstream on adjoining county. That's kind of the cause and effect of why we're in the situation we're in with flooding. So that's just things to consider. And that's a tough decision you'll have to make. But that is kind of, that is the cause and effect of it. When you displace water, if you have a bucket of water here and I set a brick in it, the water level goes up. If I take the brick out, the water level goes down. When I fill a 2-acre site with fill and build on top of it, I'm displacing water onto somebody else's property. So it's going to be a decision. We may take a hit on flood insurance premiums, may rise a little bit if we don't enact more regulation to counteract that. That's how they kind of get you.
Well, I know. That's the meat of this change, really.
And it is optional.
And it's a real issue because there are a lot of properties in Wayne County that are not going to be able to be developed because of that.
Not with fill. They can still be developed with a traditional foundation system. Of course, it'd be engineered that would elevate the home. Now, one other thing we can earn more points by raising our flood protection elevation level, which is 2 feet above BFE. You can go to 3 feet. You can go to whatever, and the higher you go, the more points you get. We left that alone. in this ordinance, that's still at 2 feet. Most people in the flood zone elevate the foundation. They don't elevate on field. So
Let me get clarification on that. How long have we had an ordinance that requires you to build 2 feet above the floodplain? Not the floodplain, the flood elevation.
It goes back to at least 2005.
Yeah, it's been some years.
Yes. I think it was.
And yet in this last flood, we had a lot of properties that were flooded. Now, that's supposedly be 2 foot above the 100-year floodplain.
Yes.
Is that right? And they still flood. So,
but you have to remember the original maps were done in 1983. A lot of those homes were elevated based on information from 1983.
Agreed.
Not 05 or not current.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman. Yes, sir. Jim, I'm going to ask you a question that you can't answer.
Okay.
You're talking about field for construction or whatever.
Yes, sir.
And is this the state saying that, or the insurance companies, or?
It's the state, North Carolina Emergency Management is making that recommendation that if we adopt that as part of our ordinance, we'll gain extra CRS credits for our ISO rating.
Okay, now my question that you can't answer. If that's being suggested or mandated by a state agency, how is another state agency feeling? Perfect example, DOT on Claridge Nursery Road. You know, one agency telling you that you don't do it, and you got another state agency that's doing it. And it's creating enough issue on Claridge Nursery Road, and I might be letting the cat out of the bag, but it's creating enough of a problem out there that the state's thinking about closing that nursery.
I don't disagree.
But I just, you know, it's one of them damn do them damn if you don't. I mean,
I don't disagree. And I mean,
look at how much this, you know, I'm not kicking the new bypass, but look how much cubic feet that took up that water used to be. Plus, it's limited on how it can get. Basically, they built a dam across Wayne County. I just don't, you know, I don't understand why one state agency is telling you one thing and then another state agency is doing right the opposite.
That's all.
I mean, I know you can't answer it. I mean, it's.
Well, the only thing I can say is that's in the past. Now, how they address that now, I don't know, but they did not fill in a floodway. They bridged across the floodway. When they got into the flood zone, they filled it. Of course, they have mitigation strategies that they do elsewhere that might not be site specific, but it's hard. I can't answer that because I don't work.
I knew you couldn't answer, but I just
all I can do
put it out there.
Right here.
Okay, I guess we'll put this.
I've got one other question. Is it possible that you could allow in the ordinance for fill if it's mitigated somewhere else? In other words, I mean, you just brought that up, that the state may be doing something like that.
They did not say that in the proposal. When I give you this other handout for the next meeting, it'll have what exactly their language.
My concern here is by enacting that so-called recommendation, you are heavily impacting a number of landowners in Wayne County of the use of their property. And for 220 points or whatever they're going to give us.
But you're seeing a discount in everybody's flood insurance rate.
Well, the guy's land, if I owned the land and I couldn't use my land or limited it, then it's a very little value to me to reduce somebody's interest rate by $10 a month.
You as a board will have to make that decision.
Oh, yes, of course.
I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, really. I know.
That's why we need the big bucks.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tough decision. I'm just throwing it out there as an option to maintain our CRS rating higher so that our citizens will.
Do you know how many are participating in the flood insurance program?
roughly, there's probably in our jurisdiction, not counting Goldsboro or any of the other towns, over 1,500 policies, around 1,500 to 1,600 policies.
Could we see what kind of impact on cost-wise that would be if whichever way we go?
Do not know the actual cost of their policies. I just know the number of them.
Could you get a percentage increase? Know that?
It's so difficult because there's so many things that we do that goes into that ISO rating, just like making flood insurance maps available at the public library, all types of brochures and documents on building in a flood zone, things that we do through our inspections office, our library, planning department, our website. Those all go into calculating that discount. I don't even know that our discount, they changed the way, we have an open space preservation credit. They changed the way that open space credit was calculated because through their rationale, they think that because FEMA bought the property or funded the project, they gave us half the credit points for the open space project for, I don't know how many acres of property it was, but a whole great big list. That's going to knock your CRS rating down, just the way they calculate the points. And they say, oh, here, by the way, we're going to enact this ordinance, and here's how you can get them back. Here to make that decision. But there's lots of things to say. 225, that's going to be a lot of points. That's a high. As far as the other items that we go through on that rating, they're usually in the 30 to 90 point area. And 225 would be the highest one of all of them. That's going to be the highest number of points you could get on any item in that CRS manual. So,
they're going to really make it easy for us to make this decision on.
Well, it's just, you have to decide, a lot of, like I say, most development that builds in a flood zone elevates the foundation. They don't build on fill. There's requirements. If you go in a flood zone, your septic tank can't be in that, it's got to be right. It could be more difficult to build on fill. The foundation system could be different. But I do know of sites in the county that are built on fill. So usually, and the people that do it, they spend a lot of money to get the engineering right to build on it. So.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Let me be straight. If we don't adopt these ordinances here, then our existing flood insurance premium for the county is going to go up. Is that correct?
The citizens' rates, if you don't adopt by June the 20th, they will not be eligible for participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, which means their policy is effective at that date.
So I think Commissioner Daughter hit the nail on the head. We don't have a choice but adopt this.
You have a choice on two items in there. One is the build on field issue, and the other one, I've got a policy in there that says you will not convert if you build an elevation up and you elevate a home, you won't convert the downstairs area, the elevated part, to living space if it was meant to be elevated above the flood.
I guess my question is, how much of this can we leave out, like, for instance, the field?
Those two items.
About the field, and still keep the flood premiums for the citizens the same as it is now? Can't do it?
Can't do it.
Okay. I guess we're in a mess. We got to look at it.
That was the answer.
I mean, I have no problem with number two. I have no problem with the conversion of the lower level.
Right.
It's the other one that's really the kicker. My question is, if we adopt it with a no-fill policy, is there any waiver of that? Can you get an exemption on that at any time in the future?
You can come before the board, and there are some policies in here on variances. And you can apply for variances to this board if it's in your jurisdiction. If it's in, because the county enforces the flood damage prevention ordinance for the towns as well, but they would have to go to that town's board the way I have it written.
So there are procedures that you could get a variance?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, if that's
this document that I'll provide for your next meeting will have everything in one color that is mandatory. Everything that was deleted will have a cross line through it. And any item that was optional will have optional written beside it.
Okay.
That one that you've got there, now this is a 26-page document. That's a 9-page summary of what we actually proposed.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's kind of
as long as there's a way out.
this is the long version of it, is what we'll end up with. But I think it may help you at the next meeting. What I would like to do is, if you'll read that, at the next meeting, we'll need to establish a public hearing on it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We'll do that.
And if you have any questions, call me. Because that's what the student, and a lot of times, you're not holding a public hearing, but it's hard for planning director to come up here and discuss projects with a board. You have to do it in an open meeting. So there's no other way. You're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes and pass an ordinance that's not fully vetted, in a public forum. Thank y'all.
Okay. County manager's comments.
Just a couple of things I wanted to mention to you. Number one, we do have a facilities committee meeting that is scheduled right after the conclusion of this board meeting. So if those who are on the facilities committee, make sure you stay. And if you're not, if you still would like to see the presentation, we would encourage you to do so. The other thing that I wanted to let you know is budget process has started. And I appreciate the conversation that I had with the chair and vice chair the other day. One thing that they've asked for is that we have a separate workshop just to discuss our CIP. So we're going to try to do that fairly quickly before we fully start the budget process, because the CIP is in. I think Commissioner Gurley was concerned in the past was, hey, we just see the CIP as part of the budget. We would like to see the projects up front so we can at least have an idea what's being requested or if additional information is needed. So we're working on trying to schedule that. And other than that, that's all I have at this time.
Mr. Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of my meetings are coming up this week. I did attend the East Carolina Council luncheon in New Bern with several of commissioners that we went to that meeting. We didn't stay. We had meetings back in Wayne County, so we couldn't stay the whole time, but it was very enlightening the time we were there as far as what we learned. So, but basically, I just want to remind, I think you saw in the newspaper where the Fremont Daffodil Festival is coming up. I want to make sure that people are aware of that. It was in the newspaper yesterday. That's one of the huge events in the northern part of the county. Always draws a huge number of people. So I think we need to have one of those, maybe several different festivals, maybe not daffodil, but maybe a rose festival or something. I mean, it really perks up those Fremont as a town, and it gives it a lot of exposure. It's that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cromartie.
Yes, sir. I've got several items, but I'm not going to elaborate on them. I just want to throw them out for public consideration. This morning when the lady gave the presentation from East Point, and the reason I specifically asked her about the wait list, I would love for the public in general to be able to say when they go to get some medical treatment, that there's not a wait list. I just wonder out loud, is there some hindrances being put in place to limit the number of medical possibility of providers in the state of North Carolina, in Wayne County, or in the United States? Over the last couple of years, the demand for doctors has grown, and the opportunity to see a medical provider in a reasonable fashion has become longer. And so of all the things that we need to work towards is to encourage our universities and the powers to be to try to make medical services more readily available to the public. This morning, as I got up, waking up, I heard that the emergency room cost was increasing. I heard someone say that the hospitals are buying up practices and therefore adding to some opportunities for the price of anything that you get medically to go up. And I would be very disappointed if Wayne Memorial Hospital is raising their rates in such a fashion because they bought up practices. And if this is, if there's a misconception on my part, I wouldn't mind being corrected by someone from the medical field. Last night, I had an opportunity to be invited to Southern Wayne High School because we got an update on the status, well, yeah, I could probably call it the status of the gym at Southern Wayne, and I have two colleagues who are all, so they may have some comment they would like to make. But the school system is moving forward, and of course, we encourage them to move forward in a expedient manner to make sure that anything that we have appropriated stays in place, and it's very much needed. And of course, there was some discussion that the preliminary decisions about what was needed need to be enhanced just a little bit. So there'll be further discussions about that. One last thing that I would like to bring out, Mr. Mayo alluded to the fact that we all went over to New Bern, but not all of us. I went over to several of us. Went over to New Bern to a meeting, and they were passing the microphone around before it got to me. I was glad that one lady stood up and made a request for the university system to go back, and I sort of paraphrase this a little bit, but go back and work on getting more certified teachers into the pipeline. For some reason, I think that the state of North Carolina stopped putting money, let me be careful how I use this, I almost repeated comment I heard, but they're not putting money and dollars into programs at the universities where traditionally teacher programs were at. And so if you don't put money into these programs, people are not going to be encouraged to come into them. And of course, when a person look down the road and see the number of years they've had to prepare to become a teacher and don't see the dollars being put in those situations, then they're not going to elect to go into teaching in the beginning. I'll close with this. A good friend of mine was a Dr. Eliza Barnett at A&T, and I can remember 6 or 7 years ago, they were running a program here at Seymour Johnson to work on teacher, so forth. And I said, Eliza, I said, when are you going to send us some more teachers? And his comment to me was, Ed, when y'all send us some candidates. So, number one, our school system need to work on encouraging youngsters to go into education, and our teacher preparation program at the university level needs to help to turn out more. And therefore, and I, on the same page with you, Mr. Merrill, I have grandchildren, and I'm concerned opportunity teachers, but the only way that's going to happen is all of us collectively, or people in the pipeline to become certified on the way out of the universities. What has happened is we have encouraged folks to go into a lot of different arenas that they wind up not finding jobs, and the jobs are not there. So then they look up and say, well, I got to make a living, and then they apply to become teachers. So then they become lateral entry teachers. Nothing wrong with a science, someone out of the science field or someone out of accounting wanting to become a teacher, fantastic. But that puts that person in a pipeline of they're not certified, they're lateral entry. It takes time to prepare them to become good teachers. That's why the universities have teacher training programs. You spend a semester out there with a trained individual, and you have a coordinator coming from the universities to work with them. We need to work hard on getting that back in place, and so I'll leave it at that for the morning. Thank you.
Mr. Dodd.
Ooh, you know, it's easy to sit back and not say anything. Keep your words to yourself. Over the last week, there's been a lot of discussion over some words. But I have responded to this entire issue to try to bring this to the public debate. I think Wayne County, that we're the problem Wayne County, because they're there. And we can stick our head in the sand and continue going down the road without addressing them. And I, for one, want to address them. I had a individual question my $1.4 million. And I didn't come up with that figure, but I'm going to tell you where it comes from. If, in fact, you provide the classrooms for the 5 low-performing schools, based upon the legislation, there will be 24 teachers that you will have to hire. And of those 24 teachers, it is estimated to cost around $60,000 per year for each teacher. And that comes to right at $1.4 million. My problem wasn't to address the issue, it was to address it in the way that it was presented. Because the school board will actually have to pay for that $1.4 million out of their reserves in order to accommodate that. Well, that will only weaken the system more. So we need to address the problem, but we don't need to address it possibly in the way that it was presented. I appreciate the comments that came today from Mr. Copeland. And in fact, I have more information today than I had before. There are 12 low-performing schools in Wayne County that have received a D grade. Now, I think this has been in the newspaper, but you know, it kind of went over my head like it does a lot of people's head. You read it and you really don't think about it. But if you'll look at that, all 12 of these are in the southeastern area of our county. Folks, we're going to have some discussion to solve this problem. We have, in the past few years, done a lot of makeup. We have catching up on things that have not been addressed for years past. But in my opinion, it's time that we start to address this issue. We cannot allow another generation of children to go through in low-performing schools. Let's find a way to put committees together, to put people together that can find a solution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Raycott.
I don't have a whole lot. As y'all know, I took a few days off last week. But I got just a couple of items. One, I had passed on to the clerk. You know, a couple of years ago, the battle that we fought to get a section of a new road named after Mr. Gray Bailey that got killed while he was working on the Goldsboro bypass. You know, DOT informed us that, you know, they could name a road after a politician or they could name a road after a law enforcement officer, but they couldn't name one after their own. And we talked to some people and made it happen anyhow. So there is a section of the new road named after Mr. Bailey. But as I was traveling this weekend, I had the opportunity to stop at a couple of rest areas in North Carolina. And in the last couple of months, and I don't know whether us battling DOT had anything to do with it or not, I just saw it this weekend. But in all of the rest areas in North Carolina, they've dedicated one whole wall with every DOT employee that has passed away since 1959 in the line of duty. And that speaks highly of the DOT. But they've only been put-ups, and I just hope that maybe our little small part maybe can help contribute to that too, because our DOT workers are being recognized now that has sacrificed their life while they were on the job. And also, Madam Clerk, question for you. According to my records, today's agenda was posted on the county website at 3:35 p.m. on last Thursday, March 15th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Gurley.
I'm trying to leave with the schools on a positive note. I had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to serve as a judge at the recent STEM fair, and I was impressed by the number of turnouts of all the kids and the entries. And matter of fact, there was 148 entries, and as I recall, they told me it's 3 times as many entries as it was last year. As large as the Maxwell Center is, and as proud as we are of it, it was full. And it was just a joy to see all the excitement those kids and the teachers' eyes as they walked around. It just mesmerized me at the excitement. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. Has already been said. You brought up the hospital, and that is, in fact, a rumor. And the reason that things are changing pretty quickly over there with Wayne County Memorial Hospital sort of and letting UNC manage the hospital, and you correct me if I'm getting this wrong now, because he was on the board. You have to be on that board. That board is as tough as this board is, and you don't get paid anything. But they're actually moving into the UNC system, the doctors. They're no longer being managed by Wayne County Memorial Hospital Physician Network. They're going to the UNC network, which gives them the opportunity to take care of the HR part. They help us with great recruiting, and it is tough to get doctors. We're really hurting in primary care. That's the biggest one. That's where you sit most of the time waiting. But the merger helps out. It makes Wayne Memorial Hospital stronger because, like I say, you got a bigger buying group that you can buy from. You got greater research. You got your fingertips at the latest research in at UNC and the whole system. It's a cultural change for Wayne County, and it's a tough job. And I give Janie a lot of credit for doing the work she's doing. But they are, in fact, trying to move this thing to be able to make money. Typically, the hospital makes money. In the past, they've lost money on the practice side. So hopefully that's going to make a change. That's what we're understanding it will be. Am I correct? Okay. He served 2 years over there, and I'm in my second year now, and I know you served over there too. But just want everybody to know that it's not quite like you see, and it's changing, and there are more changes to come. And those are my comments today. Anything else to come before us before we go back into closed session? And we need to go back in for the same reason?
Same item.
All right, there's a motion to go back in closed session. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you.